Hi, my name is Mike Rutkowski, estate planning and elder law attorney here at the Rutkowski Law Firm. What are you doing in here?
Hey Dad, you're in my chair.
In your chair? I'm not giving up my chair.
Welcome to the Rutkowski Law Firm.
Hello and welcome to Life Lessons with the Rutkowski Law Firm, where we break down the complex world of estate planning into simple, actionable steps. As an experienced estate planning attorney, Michael Rutkowski has helped countless families protect their assets, avoid costly mistakes, and create lasting legacies. Today we'll be focused on what happens when you're already in the probate process and things to look out for and avoid. And to help us on that journey is our estate planning, Medicaid, and elder law attorney, Michael Rutkowski. Michael, welcome back.
Thanks for having me as always, Carrie.
We talk a lot about estate planning and how it's so critical to do from a proactive standpoint to avoid the probate process at all costs. But some people find themselves in this scenario and they're already in the throes of it and there's nothing they can do about it. So let's help these families out and give them some tips and tricks on how to navigate the probate process. How can we make it a little less painful?
Okay, so we're in the probate process now. What? Good question. Couple things. So we need to look to see if there's a will, because essentially at some point, a judge is going to have to decide who gets all this stuff. And so it's going to go one of two ways. They're either going to use a will as like evidence of what you wanted to happen to your stuff. They don't have to follow that. Maybe that's a whole nother episode, but they don't have to follow the will. But the will is going to be evidence of what you wish were to happen. If not, there's something called intestate succession. Every state statute has a what if you didn't have a plan? They have a plan for you. And what does that look like? In Michigan, and so this is worth looking into, in Michigan, it doesn't just automatically go all to your spouse, then to your kids. It goes essentially, the first $200,000 plus inflation goes to your spouse, and then it starts dividing between spouse and kids. Very strange, I know. You're probably sitting there being like, who decided that? And because I've never done a plan.
What if your kids are underage?
Yeah, like what is going on with that idea? But it is what it is. So look into your state statute as to what the state has in store for you. Okay, but we're in probate. Maybe we have a will, maybe we don't. We've submitted the evidence we have to a judge. Here's what we have to do next. We have to figure out what on earth did this person have? And so I know a lot of times people are very close to the vest on what their assets are, whatever. So we got to start figuring that out. And there's a couple ways to do it. And we have families do these things. You can just watch the mailbox. That's obviously one way of for 90 days, be watching the mailbox. The problem is that it's not like it was 20 years ago where everything came as paper statements. A lot of things are coming electronically these days. So if you somehow have access to the person's email, that could be helpful to try to see. I mean, having access to people's technology would be huge because you're going to end up finding things a little bit faster. But let's say you don't have that access. You've checked the mailbox, you've done your due diligence there. Another thing we sometimes have to do is we have to do asset searches, essentially hiring private investigators to do local and national searches to just see what comes up. We can run searches through someone's social security number. It's possible. We don't do that as attorneys personally, but we hire third parties to kind of help with those searches because we got to figure out what is there.
Could you figure that out by looking up a credit score? Does that give you any indication?
Sure, if you can figure out a way to do that. We typically will just send these, people who are having this difficulty to, a private investigator that we have a relationship with that does a good job. But there's probably ways to try to figure this out yourself too. But that's because what's going to end up happening is if you miss something, it's going to end up in that unclaimed property thing in your state. And then we might end up, finding that 5 years later, having to reopen the probate, go through the whole process again. And sometimes with that unclaimed property, you don't even know how much the value is. So that's always kind of challenging. So
let's do it right the first time. Let's hire that private investigator.
Know what documentation you have, start gathering what the assets are. You have to do the notice to creditors. So you have that 4-month window of where you're going to get claims on the estates. You're going to get things like their bank statements, if they had leases on cars, everything's going to be coming your way. And so you got to just kind of file these And then you got to figure out what order you're going to pay them in out of the estate. That's kind of a process that would probably happen 4 to 6 months in after the notice to creditors period has closed, because we need to know before we start paying any bills, like what all is owed, right? I wouldn't just start paying bills. Sometimes that's where it feels like you should just start paying them as they come in, but you need to pay them in the order of priority for the creditor. Like, for instance, a medical bill has priority, or a mortgage has priority over a credit card. Credit card's unsecured debt. So you do need to know in what order you need to pay, because sometimes the estate doesn't have enough to pay all the bills. And you don't want them coming after you, the personal representative, because you didn't do the job right.
Yeah.
You're probably like, right now, you're probably sitting there like, I need to hire an attorney to do this. Because it's just complicated. They honestly make it way overcomplicated. It just is what it is. So those are, if you're sitting in the probate process, that's probably what you're dealing with right now. Once you've figured out the estate, figured out the debts, then you file what's called an inventory with the probate court to let them know essentially the full picture of what's going on. Here's all the assets, here's all the debts, here's what we're paying. That's kind of what's happening. Once you've gone through all of that, then it's time to be thinking about distributions. So that's another thing here. If you're the personal representative or executor of the estate, you probably have people coming at you being like, hey, where's my share? Well, you shouldn't do that until we've gone through the notice to creditor period. So it should be at least 6 months plus before you're making any distributions, because you don't want to do this wrong where you have any liability yourself. And then you got to figure out, what the distributions are according to intestate succession or the will. You submit that to a judge for approval before you do it. Eventually you'll close out the estate, but that won't happen for 9 to 18 months after you've gone through everything. Another tip that I just thought of, don't be removing stuff from the house. You can't do anything. You can't do anything until a judge says so. So essentially, secure the home if there was a home for the person who passed, and don't let anyone take anything from it, because you can get a lot of trouble with the judge if people are just going and then they're taking stuff.
That is wild.
Yeah.
You can't sell the home. You can't get anything out of the home until it could be anywhere from 6 to 18 months after the person's passed. So the home's
100%.
just sitting there.
Just sitting there.
Oh.
You can start during the process. You can start engaging a real estate professional to help you sell the home, but you can't do that either without a court approval. So you're kind of like at the mercy of the court, which is terrible. And guess what? All of this is avoided with the trust.
Yes. Well, if you are currently already in the probate process, or you're about to be and you would like some help, please give us a call. We'll help you along the way and make sure we bring in the right experts, like the investigators, and following the process accordingly to maybe move things along a little faster. And if you're not in the probate process and want to avoid it at all costs, we appreciate you there and are happy to help in regard to that as well. So give us a call at 248-955-2842. We're here to guide you every step of the way. And if you want to keep learning about the ins and outs of estate planning, be sure to subscribe to this channel and take the first step towards peace of mind, because estate planning isn't just about documents, it's about protecting your family and securing your legacy. Thank you all so much. Michael, thank you as always. And until next time.
See you soon.